Welcome to another video. Have you seen the new TV series, Ted Lasso? It's absolutely brilliant, and it's about an American football coach who comes over to London to manage a Premier League football team. It's very funny, and it's this really interesting take on American optimism versus British cynicism. It's also got this character or this player who runs around the whole time saying football is life. And I really love that single-minded passion, and I think I might start using it. Photography is life. Or maybe more appropriately, life is photography. Anyway, welcome to another video. I'm going to start today with a bit of a rant because it's a very frustrating time, and I'm not sure there's ever been a point in human history where it's been more difficult to know what the right thing to do is. There's so much fear and anxiety around that's then whipped up by the press and online, where opinion is sold as fact and we're constantly being lied to. There's so much bullshit around that we just don't know what or who we can believe anymore. It feels like we've almost got to the point where being fake and deceiving people is deemed to be acceptable. I came across a story the other day where a number of TikTok and Instagram influencers had been busted for using a version of a film set to make it look like they were on a private jet. It's just astounding to me that there's so much desire for this kind of thing, that these businesses build up around them, creating and selling the use of these sets. It's a sad indictment of the time that people are so desperate for attention and influence that they are willing to deceive their audience in this way. It's very sad, although I'm not surprised. The other week I discussed the idea of fake photography, and I posted a series of images to Instagram to highlight how an image can be changed beyond all recognition of reality by using AI software. I essentially came to the conclusion that this visual art and CGI is awesome, but it's definitely not photography anymore. Photography to me is an incredible art form that deserves more credibility and prominence than it often receives. The capture of amazing moments, the carefully crafted compositions, the incredible stories being told. So many of you are superb photographers working really hard to make the best image you possibly can. It's exciting and it inspires me. Then the other day though, I saw this advert. You might have even seen the same advert before this video, and it was for that same piece of AI software called Luminar 4. Now it left a very bitter taste in my mouth because throughout the advert, they take a landscape photograph and start to apply all these AI improvements with a constant message of making your photos better by applying fake sky or fake light streaks or fake fog. The upbeat narration just made this deception sound totally okay to create these fake images and pass them off as real. I'm starting to wonder whether this software is doing anything good at all for the art of photography. When I've talked like this before, people have accused me of being a purist, and I'm not. I don't believe that everything has to be captured perfectly in camera. AI is generally interesting and exciting technology anyway, but I just don't want the human story being taken out of the art. I just try to see it from an outside perspective. The medium of photography still very much captures a moment of reality. People therefore believe, at least initially, that the final image that they are presented with is real, something they could experience if they were stood in that same position. I therefore don't want to breach the trust of the viewer. I don't want to do so much post-processing that the final image bears no resemblance to reality. I feel particularly passionate about that with landscape. The world around us is beautiful just the way it is. It's fantastic when we put the effort in and witness a beautiful saturated sunrise, but it's equally beautiful when it's raining or it's cold or it's foggy or it's grey. There's great photographs to be made in any conditions. These nuanced images are so often more interesting anyway. Life is not highly saturated at all times, and our photographs don't need to be either. What these people that aim to deceive us don't understand is that we don't want it to be easy, because that's boring and much less meaningful. It's the journey that counts, the challenge and the struggle that make it fulfilling. And it's that element that makes it resonate with people. In this time when it's hard to know what to believe, authenticity is more important than ever. But when we're trying to create original and interesting photography, we're so often told that the key to being authentic is to be yourself or do you. Now that's fine and it is right, but I think it's a little bit simplistic and not massively helpful because being yourself is not easy really at all. And that's especially the case when there are so many external pressures and influences. I'll give you an example. We now live in this ad-driven clickbait world where we're influenced by the algorithms of 3 to 4 huge tech companies. Now, if we're not careful, these algorithms can start to drive the type of photograph or content that we create. So one photographer goes out and takes a picture of a Highland cow in a field. They post it to Instagram, it's a good picture, it does really well, and it gets loads of likes. A few people then see that and think, that's awesome, I'm gonna do the same. And they go out and they recreate or copy the image. We then have 3 more pictures on Instagram. And because that original picture was actually really good, they do quite well as well, and they get lots of likes. The algorithm then notices that these pictures of Highland cows are very popular, so it starts pushing them into more people's feeds. We then start seeing all these pictures of Highland cows in fields with moody split toning, and they're performing well, and then before we know it, we are stood in a field taking a picture of a Highland cow. It's very subtle, very scary, and very manipulative, and we're all bound to fall into it at one point or another. Being original and authentic is hard though, and it's not always going to work out the way we expect. We have to try to understand ourselves, be self-aware, and also not be too hard on ourselves, because we are going to make mistakes along the way. There's also a good chance that what we create won't be very good, even if it is authentic. So how do we continue to improve our photography and remain authentic? Like I said, we have to be kind to ourselves, especially in the first few years, and understand how we learn. There's a fine line between creative genius and pretentious dick. There are far too many photographers out there who claim they don't shoot the iconic locations or images. I bet you did once, mate. In fact, visiting these famous locations can be extremely beneficial, especially when we're just starting out, because landscape photography is difficult and we know we can go to these places and capture some great images, even if our compositions are similar to those of photographers who've come before us. Imitation is a fundamental first step of learning an art. When we first start to play a musical instrument, for example, we start by learning how to play the songs of other people. No one then questions this or accuses us of copying. In fact, it's really a compliment to the original artist. This takes us right back round to the fact that photography deserves a lot more prominence. If great images and great photographers were more widely celebrated, then imitating one of their images would be seen as a learning process and a compliment, and accusations of plagiarism would be reduced. The next stage of learning an art is integration. But before we talk about that, I have just released my new box set that I'm extremely proud of. It's a celebration of the UK landscape and my interpretation of the highest mountains to the autumn woodland, lakeland retreats, and the incredible coastline that shapes the way we live. My wish is this collection will spark a feeling of hope and childish wonder that will encourage us out of the door in search of the next adventure. I'll put a link down below for you to check it out, and I think it would make for a very special gift or just look great on your wall. So the next stage of learning an art is integration, and this is where we start to use some of those techniques and ideas that we've picked up at the imitation stage, but start feeding in some of our own artistic vision. This is undoubtedly the stage as well where we're going to make the most mistakes and have the most perceived failures. It's hard to be good at photography, so be kind to yourself and don't even see it as a failure. If you do something and it works out, then great, do some more of that. If you do something and it doesn't work out though, Great, then adjust. So the final stage is innovation. This could take years to achieve, but it's where we start to create and produce genuinely original work that has your stamp of authenticity all over it. That doesn't mean it suddenly becomes easy though. In fact, you could find that it becomes even harder as we start to hold ourselves to higher standards and suffer things like creative anxiety or imposter syndrome. We're always learning, so remember that it's the journey and the struggle that counts. It doesn't really matter what stage we're at, and in fact, there's only really one destination in life. I was running a photography tour last week, and always one of my favourite moments is when we sit down for a critique session, where we get to look at each other's work and prints. And almost on every single occasion, without fail, a photographer will produce a print or image that's just an incredible piece of work. But then when I ask them about it, their description goes no further than telling us how it was created technically. This is not the interesting part, and moving beyond this is key to innovation and authenticity in your work. You are the key. You are the USP in your work that will make it authentic and original. Understanding ourselves, what motivates us and why, is absolutely critical to innovation. I always say curiosity is hugely important in photography and in life. We want to think about it with our composition. What do we want to fit inside this frame? But equally, and possibly more importantly, we want to think about what we want to exclude from the frame. What don't I like? What will happen if I shift my perspective up or down or side to side? By constantly digging deeper and understanding why, the stories we tell with our work will be much more meaningful and interesting and authentic. As humans anyway, we completely know when someone is being genuine and authentic. We just know, and it's compelling. Imagine a band on a stage in a packed out house putting on an incredible show. They are not thinking about the technicality of what they're doing. They're in the zone, they're entertaining us and bearing their soul to the world. And we feel that connection in an emotional way that has the power to make us laugh and even make us cry, and provides an experience that we'll remember forever. And photography can do this as well. A single image has the power to evoke the full range of emotions and transport us and fire our imaginations. As my friend and mentor Charlie Waite says, photography is hard. We have to decide what to put inside the frame. There are no words, no sounds, and no smells. We have just that one opportunity, that one moment in time to convey the story with the aim to encourage an emotional response from the viewer based on the silent exchange between viewer and landscape. I talked about the band being in the zone, and this flow state is something that I've been thinking and reading about quite a lot recently. It's essentially that state of single-minded focus that we get into when we're doing something that's hard and to a high standard, and it's almost entirely a positive process. I remember being in this state in the past when playing a rugby match. At that moment, nothing else would matter. The distractions of life just melted away and time passed really quickly. And I'm now convinced that we can enter this flow state as photographers too. That place when we're not thinking about the technical settings and it feels like the compositions are just forming themselves. This definitely happens to me when shooting a wedding, but I think it can also happen on a landscape shoot as well. It's definitely not easy. A sound technical knowledge and a well-practiced workflow is essential, as is a love of nature and the landscape. Nature lives in a constant state of ebb and flow, like the tide washing in and out, or cloud pouring over a mountain, or the wind moving through a wood. My aim is always to make a connection to the landscape, and I think what I'm actually doing is essentially trying to tap in to this flow state. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't always happen, and landscape photography can be very frustrating. But when I look back at all of my best images over the last couple of years, I feel on each of those occasions it's been when I've got into the zone. You've seen them on this channel. It's those moments when I get overexcited or passionate and start fist pumping. Sometimes you get an even more clear sign too. During last week's tour, on the very last minute of the very last shoot, this rainbow burst into life right in front of us, providing one more stunning opportunity. It was actually a very emotional moment. The point of this video is not to tell you what to do. It's a question, a challenge even to ourselves. Is my photography authentic? Because if we're not being authentic generally in life, then it's virtually impossible for our photography to be. We've never needed authenticity more than we do right now, but it's also important not to judge. We're humans, we're fallible, and we will make mistakes. The beauty of a photography journey though is it's just so positive, and we can start being authentic right from day one. One thing I've always found funny about bullshitters is what they don't seem to understand is that we all know when they're bullshitting. It's a pointless game. Be curious, ask questions, keep it real, and be self-aware, and authenticity is sure to follow. And this, like when we get out into nature, is the breath of fresh air we all need.